Well, you've seen the terror alerts they put up on television from mild to imminent to fearmonger. Well, now they're going to have NOAA, the National Weather Service, to the world putting out climate alerts every time there's a tornado or a hurricane or a typhoon. It's our fault. And they'll have lots of graphics up on television telling us why it's hot in the summer, why it's cold in the winter, and how all the penguins drowned in Antarctica, and how all the polar bears died in the Arctic. Of course, it won't matter if there's 5 times the polar bears today that there were in 1955, according to the federal government and its survey, and the Russian numbers show the same thing. Reality doesn't matter. You know, I hate to say I told you so, but they just follow a playbook. I've had to have said at least 100 times the last couple months that when they finally strike supposed ISIS, to really cover up the fact that our government is running the whole show and has been for 4 years, that they would come out and say that they had struck some little subgroup, because there are a bunch of different jihadi groups that aren't under Western NATO CIA control, and that they would actually destroy groups that were competing, like Khorasan, that has 50 members, they think, and there was an imminent attack coming from them. And I said earlier this week, I said last week, I said a month ago, I said probably every day till everyone was sick of hearing it, that they would not even strike real ISIS, because that's the entire real force. You can't bomb the force you just armed and trained, but you've got to have the PR excuse to start bombing outside of the Constitution and congressional authorization inside Syria, and this is how they do it. They may come out in a month and say that Assad's secretly with ISIS or something. I mean, that's how stupid they think you and I are. But sure enough, I was just talking, and the guys pulled up the NOAA weather alerts, and it says soon they're going to give us climate alerts. So it always starts with something legitimate sounding. Bzz, 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 your phone turns on. High water alert, high water alert. Or bzz, bzz, wildfires in your area. Now it's bzz, bzz, hot weather because of climate change, extreme weather, climate change. With the authority of government saying it's quote, global warming, climate change. Well, there's always change. Now the government messages, this is how it starts, from the president about terror threats, and from NOAA, and from the Department of Education, and, oh, get your vaccines, bzz, bzz, bing, bing, depending on how you have your phone set. And now it's constant. It'll be the middle of the night, and my phone, and it wasn't like this until a few months ago, will turn on and start giving me alerts. Before, it had to be on to do that. So I have to turn it off and put it in another room when it's raining in Austin, or the bzz, bzz, government messages. I remember they were trying this back in the 80s, and I covered it in the 90s. People didn't believe it when I was reading articles about it. Now it's here. And this is all part of the internet kill switch, government taking over radio, TV, the EAS alert systems. But what's important is they're now rolling it out, which tells you we're closer to the big D-Day globalist takeover. So we're going to analyze Lord Obama's speech at the UN. We are going to break down what's happening with Khorasan and these strikes. And I was watching CNN this morning, and they had the female newsreader there listening to the military analyst speak, going, she was just going, oh, she had this look on her face of total concern, totally fake, of how deadly ISIS is and how they're about to blow us all up. Yeah, after our government gave them the weapons. We had some guests lined up, but I went ahead and had the decks cleared because I want to cover news in depth. I want to play big pieces of Obama's UN speech today and analyze it, from invoking Ferguson, that America's a horrible police state, while they push the police state, to saying that they're going to save the world from ISIS and Khorasan, and they're going to save the world with global carbon taxes and taking over your cell phones and the internet with all sorts of climate change fear-mongering alerts. See, I told you the Amber Alerts start with kidnapped kids and flash floods and wildfires. Sounds reasonable. But the plan, since 1997, when I learned about it from the Texas Association of Broadcasters, where I was talking to one of their high-level people, he put me in touch with some engineers, and then they gave me the restricted documents that I made a film about, Police State 2000, where they were already getting them ready then, saying, government's going to take over hours of programming a day. We're going to jack into radio and TV. We're going to jack into the internet. And there's going to be smartphones in the future, the little handheld computers. And we are going to force our programming over it for the public service. No more will you play public service announcements. That'll still happen, but it won't just be that. We will take over when we want. Now, people watched Police State 2000. About 20 minutes of the 2-hour film got into that. They thought, this is crazy. Even though I showed the EAS machines, even though I showed the secret documents, even though they actually at the time figured out who one of the engineers was and fired him over it. I've never told this story, and he blew his head off. That's how screwed up this country is. This guy managed 10 stations in town. Blew his head off. So that's what people have gone through, just so we can tell you what's coming before it happens. So don't let this be pearls before swine here, ladies and gentlemen. They don't want you knowing this intel before it's rolled out, okay? And now they've announced, NOAA has come out, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, I think that's what it stands for, and is saying in a press release, we're going to be giving you climate change, global warming, scare tactic, written by Al Gore alerts. They already have little kids in the U.S. and Australia, you can pull this up, counting their carbon calories and deciding when to die. And if they don't decide to commit suicide, this is ABC News, you can pull it up. Then little animals die and blood squirts out of baby pigs and chickens. If you're a new listener, I'm not joking. You can't make this up. You can't make up 2 + 2 = 5. Other Common Core stuff, 7 + 3 = 11. 7 + 8 = wrong numbers. This is about them getting away with committing crime out in the open to trample us underfoot and break our will. And that's the admitted policy of saying, I'm going to open the borders up without even an executive order. That would be illegal, but just forget the executive order. I'm going to execute carbon taxes and shut down half our power plants when Congress says no and votes it down, just because I feel like it. I'm going to launch strikes even though Congress says they'll authorize. I don't need your authorization. That's what this is all about. That's what it's all about, is completely training us to accept anything and everything. Kind of like, oh, the NSA isn't spying on anybody without a warrant. Then it comes out they're spying on everything. And then people find secret cell phone towers up everywhere, stealing our data in live time. And the FBI comes out on national television and says, it must be hackers. And then, of course, it comes out in the Associated Press that and the Washington Post yesterday, that they've ordered the police departments to lie to the public when people say, what are these? That is called an organized crime conspiracy, a racketeering operation 101, a criminal state. And I want to be clear, this is the administration doing this and the power structure. The federal marshals, the FBI, the Secret Service are all completely freaked out about this, and they're the ones being spied on. They're the ones being set up. The officers at the Pentagon get called into briefings. Just come out in the news and say, all 10,000 of you have been found with child porn on your computer. And they go, excuse me? We didn't, doesn't matter, it's on your computer, so you play ball or you're going to be indicted. See, all this hacking's two ways, folks. All these chips already on the computers from Intel and Microsoft, it's come out, that are remote controlled by design. They don't even need to be plugged into the internet or wireless. They can be controlled by the cell signals. We told you that 7 years ago because engineers brought us the documents. 7 years ago. It was in the news in January of this year that, new Intel chips can be energized from a distance under a secret NSA contract. It's not new. We're not in Kansas anymore. That's what I keep trying to get through to people. There it is. Secret G3 Intel chip gives Snoops backdoor PC access. People basically were forced to suicide over this just basic information in America that you should know the preachers are government spies. You should know their government program. You should know about InfraGard. You should know about all this. You have a right. This is a scientific takeover. It's evil. People say, oh, you have so much courage to fight it, Alex. Thank you. Courage? I'd have to be the most crazy brave person on earth not to fight this. That's why I don't want people calling and complimenting me ever again. What I'm doing is what you're supposed to do. We're cornered, folks. I'm not looking for a fight. I don't want to be in these criminals' face. I don't have a choice. Have you figured that out? They're not going to leave anything standing. It's a full takeover because criminals have to destroy good. Criminals have to destroy checks and balances. Criminals have to destroy honor and dignity and good people. Even if you don't think you're good, you are compared to these people. They want a system of total oppression because they believe it's the only system they're safe in. Now, they're really ignorant because historically, tyrannies end up destroying the people that set it up every time. It's the most unstable system, but it's their instinct that's twisted. It's what they do. And I've only covered like one article so far. It's the fact that now I'm going to get deadly extreme climate due to climate change and global warming from the government. And then you read articles about Google restricting conservatives on the web and saying, well, Microsoft already banned them. We won't stand for climate change denial. And there's a total consensus. No scientist disagrees that man-made global warming is happening. They've got international polls out. The vast majority say it's a complete flaming fraud, but they sit up there on the news saying, no, everyone agrees. Not one scientist. The funny thing is, though, the LA Times came out and said it's pure bull because now, if you look at the different studies and numbers, over 90% of real scientists, climatologists, planetologists, you could call them, astrophysicists, meteorologists say it has nothing to do with carbon dioxide. And the graphs show that. When it heats, carbon dioxide goes up a year later because there's more life, there's more plants, they're releasing more oxygen and carbon dioxide. They release more carbon dioxide, we release carbon dioxide, they release oxygen. And it's the carbon cycle. It's just so ridiculous. All right, we're going to come back. Get into all the news, open the phones up, get into Obama's UN address. It is off the chart evil. Alex Jones here, back live. If I'm getting a little bit hysterical, it's because we should be hysterical. We won't get out of this by laying down and going along with the system anymore. If you study human activity, human populations, we know the cycles that countries, peoples, civilizations go through. You look at the cycle we're in, every major historian, every major analyst now concurs with what Ron Paul and myself and Bob Chapman and Gerald Celente and John Williams and Mark Faber and Jim Rogers and so many other people were saying 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It's not hard to know that if you start deficit spending and you start accelerating fiat currency printing, that it may be 20 years, it may be 50 years, you will go Weimar Republic hyperinflation. You will go Zimbabwe inflation. And the system has been doing this on purpose, gearing up the police state, gearing up the apparatus of state control, gearing up a system of oppression. And it'd be bad enough if they'd done this on purpose to consolidate control, and then we're just getting ready for all the poor people they had to corral. They're getting ready to use the collapse to bring in total totalitarianism to target the intelligentsia. Because the elite want everything for themselves, the life extension technologies. They do not want to share it because they believe that if you give super augmentation, we're talking having a 2,000 IQ, is what they believe is going to happen. Kurzweil, Joy, all of them. And they're now open about it. They weren't 20 years ago when I was first warning you. It was in more deep DARPA documents and things that were semi-public. A lot of this stuff would get released and by the National Federation of Scientists, and I'd cover it on air, and then it would say, the Federation of Scientists has been requested by the Department of Defense to reclassify this. And they would send Marine Corps officers to UT Austin and to the Sunshine Project in uniform to demand documents back and things. I mean, this was in the news. Documents that we cover in my book that's now in an ebook. It's been out of print for a long time. 9/11, The Road to Tyranny, but in there we have the shots of the documents and things where DARPA said, first you'll have a phone, then you'll have contact lenses, then it'll be a chip, and then you'll basically merge with it, and then to bring total peace, everyone will live in tanks. And you'll live in virtual reality from birth to death, and it'll be an artificial programmed reality. And then we will power the computers off the human heat and have basically these big algae tanks and things that produce the protein for the new humanoid species. And you're probably saying, I've heard of this before. It's the Matrix. Yeah, folks, the Wachowski brothers are basically just made a movie about what DARPA believes they're going to do to humans. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but this was in government documents released by the Federation of American Scientists and the Sunshine Project and others. You know what else Sunshine Project released? That they have helicopter drone bases. They had this in like 1996 with the knockout gas that they estimate will kill about 11% of the people. The drones take off, they fly over at a couple thousand feet, they spray it. One whiff, you're knocked out. But they said it'll cause fires, wrecks, and a large portion of people will just die. Of course, that's what was declassified, and the Marines wanted it reclassified. The deeper documents are those helicopters serviced by robot conveyor belts, just a robot loading system, loads what canisters are there. Nerve gas. There are helicopters placed all across the country with grids with lethal nerve gas ready. That's who really runs our government. And see, I've got all this news here to cover, and it sounds insane, but it's really happening. I'm giving you the rest of the story, what I'm really thinking about. I mean, do people really just want to go along with this elite and just think, oh, it's too extreme, that'll never happen? Really, Obamacare with death panels and the veterans put on secret death list to not give them cancer care and things, and a wink with the yuppies and Ezekiel Emanuel saying, yeah, go ahead, don't give them treatment, let them die. Don't give old people treatment. They're just coming out in the open with everything. And they're going to continue until we freak out. What they're trying to do is just titrate the dose. That's how people that work with poisonous snakes, they give them a dose of the poison up and up and up and up until they can take a full dose and not die. Well, that can work the reverse, where they give us tyranny by increment until we just end up accepting everything like the frog in the pot. That's what's happening. We're going to come back and get into the news. Stay with us.
Introducing the first proprietary oxygen-based intestinal cleanser, OxyPowder. Backed by real FDA-approved phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. People are suffering from all kinds of digestive issues these days. All the toxins from the air, the food, the water, ultimately ends up in the gut or affects the gut. My main focus was to come up with a remedy for this, something that's safe and effective that anyone can take on a regular basis to keep their intestinal lining clean. My recommendation is to clean your intestines at least 2 to 3 times a week to prevent the toxic buildup from going into your bloodstream. Take your health into your own hands and start cleansing your body today with Oxy Powder. Secure your Oxy Powder today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.